Good morning and happy Sabbath.
Dobro jutro in lepo soboto vam želim.
I'm very glad to be here in this beautiful country with these beautiful people.
Zelo sem vesela, da sem lahko tukaj v tej čudoviti deželi s čudovitimi ljudmi.
I want to introduce myself a little bit more.
Malo bom se še predstavila.
I like to say that I am a Bible believer Christian.
Zase rada rečem, da sem kristjanka, ki veruje v Sveto pismo.
And that I am also a scientist.
In da sem tudi znanstvenica.
So a Bible believer scientist.
Torej znanstvenica, ki verjame v Sveto pismo.
And for some people that sounds very weird.
In nekaterim ljudem se to zdi zelo čudno.
How can you put the religion and the Bible with the science together?
Kako lahko svetopisemsko vero in znanost združite skupaj?
Well, you can.
Da se.
And I am a very fortunate person because I can, in my job, I can actually do that.
In štejem se za srečno osebo, ker dejansko lahko to počnem v svoji službi.
As I was said, I work for the Geoscience Research Institute.
Kot je bilo rečeno, delam za Geoznanostni raziskovalni inštitut.
Which is an institution from the General Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Ki je inštitucija Generalne konference Adventistične cerkve.
That works precisely on that, on putting the science and the Bible together.
Ki dela prav na tem, torej da združi znanost in Sveto pismo.
To show them the Bible can illuminate and make science thrive.
Da lahko pokaže, kako Sveto pismo razsvetljuje znanost in omogoča njen razcvet.
And also that the science can help us to know God better.
In da nam tudi znanost pomaga pri boljšem razumevanju Boga.
So if you want to know more about the Geoscience Research Institute and what we do,
če želite izvedeti več o tem raziskovalnem inštitutu za geoznanost in kar delamo,
we can go to our website grisda.org.
Si lahko ogledate več na tej spletni strani.
And there you can find articles, videos, many resources to talk about faith and science together.
In tam lahko najdete številne članke, videe in druge vire, ki govorijo o Svetem pismu in znanosti.
A little bit more about myself.
Še nekaj besed o meni.
I am passionate about two things.
Zelo sem vneta za dve stvari.
One is animals.
Ena so živali.
You can see here, this is a picture from my PhD field research.
Kot vidite tukaj je slika, fotografija iz mojega raziskovanja za doktorat.
That it was done in Honduras.
Ki sem ga opravila v Hondurasu.
And I was working with this beautiful animal, the olive ridley sea turtle.
In delala sem s temi čudovitimi živalmi, z morskimi želvami.
So animals on one side.
Torej, živali so ena od teh stvari.
And my other passion is education, children and teenagers.
In moja druga strast je izobraževanje, otroci in pa najstniki.
So I try to prepare materials and programs and activities for children.
Zato poskušam pripravljati različne materiale in programe za otroke.
Where they can discover more about God.
Kjer lahko odkrijejo več o Bogu.
Through science.
Skozi znanost.
In a fun way.
In to na zabaven način.
So I try always to put some fun science in my children's programs.
Zato poskušam vedno v svoje programe za otroke dodati nekaj zabavnih elementov z področja znanosti.
So I thought that I could tell a children's story here with an experiment.
Danes sem najprej mislila, da bom povedala tukaj eno zgodbo za otroke z eksperimentom.
I was told that children would have a parallel program, so we wouldn't have children here.
Ampak bilo mi rečeno, otroci imajo svoj program, tako da ne bojo tukaj.
I'm seeing a few children in the room,
Nekaj jih
so that's
vseeno
good.
vidim, kar je dobro.
And also, all of you know that we have to be like children to go into the kingdom.
In kot veste, Jezus pravi, da moramo vsi biti kot otroci, da bi prišli v nebeško kraljestvo.
So this story is actually good for all of us.
Zato je ta zgodba dobra za vse nas.
Do you remember people in the Bible who were asked by God to do something that looked very difficult?
Verjetno se spomnite ljudi iz Svetega pisma, ki jih je Bog pozval, da naredijo nekaj težkega.
Things that were even dangerous for their lives.
stvari, ki so bile morda celo nevarne za njihovo življenje.
And sometimes things that look a little crazy.
In včasih stvari, ki so bile videti malo nore.
Think about Noah.
Pomislite recimo na Noeta.
He was asked to build a boat in the middle of the land.
Bil je povabljen zgraditi ladjo in to sredi kopnega.
Because it was going to rain, but it had never rained before.
Ker bo deževalo, ampak nikoli še ni deževalo do takrat.
Or think about Abraham.
Ali pa pomislite na Abrahama.
Take everything you have and start walking and I will tell you where you go.
Vzemi vse, kar imaš in začni hoditi in jaz ti bom povedal, kam naj greš.
Or Moses.
Ali pa Mojzesa.
Go to Pharaoh and tell him to release his slaves.
Pojdi k faraonu in mu reci, naj osvobodi svoje sužnje.
That was dangerous.
To je bilo nevarno.
But all these characters, they obeyed.
Ampak vse te osebe so bile poslušne.
And they did it because they knew who was asking.
In to so naredili, ker so vedeli, kdo je tisti, ki jih poziva k temu.
Because they were friends with God.
Ker so bili prijatelji z Bogom.
Because they trusted God and they knew that He will provide.
Ker so zaupali Bogu in so vedeli, da bo on poskrbel za njih.
That He would protect them.
Da jih bo zaščitil.
That they were not going to be harmed.
Da se jim ne bo zgodilo nič slabega.
So now comes the experiment.
In zdaj pride na vrsto eksperiment.
I'm going to ask someone here to do something that looks dangerous.
Povabila bom nekoga tukaj, da naredi nekaj, kar je videti nevarno.
I'm going to light a fire on someone's hand.
Prižgala bom ogenj na roki nekoga.
That's dangerous.
To je nevarno.
And most of you don't know me at all.
In večina vas me sploh ne pozna.
So probably you won't trust me much.
Zato mi verjetno ne zaupate ravno veliko.
There is a person in the room that is a good friend of mine.
Ampak v tem prostoru je ena oseba, ki je moj dober prijatelj.
So I'm going to ask Petra. Petra, do you trust me?
Petra, tebe bom povabila, mi zaupaš?
So come here and show that to
Pridi
us.
in pokaži to zaupanje.
Okay, I'm going to light a fire on your hand and I'm going to dress like a scientist before. Yeah.
Jaz bom prižgala ogenj na tvoji roki, prej se bom oblekla kot znanstvenica.
She has never done that before.
Petra še tega ni naredila.
So, for this to work, you have to follow my directions very faithfully.
Da bi to delovalo, je treba moje navodila upoštevati zelo dosledno.
When God asks something from us, we have to do it to the letter.
Ko Bog nekaj pričakuje od nas, seveda moramo to dosledno upoštevati.
So you want to be burned.
Torej ne boš se opekla.
Now you have to put your hand in here, put it down, get it wet.
Daj svojo roko sem, da se namoči.
Okay, now take it out. Now take just the bubbles, just
Samo
like this.
mehurčke
Okay.
zajemi.
Now come like here, stand your hand.
Sem, stegni roko.
When you feel the heat, you just have to close your hand.
Ko začutiš toploto, samo zapri pest.
Okay. Let's go for it.
Poskusimo.
Thank you so much.
Hvala, Petra.
Okay. If you trust God,
Če zaupate Bogu,
even when something looks dangerous or difficult,
tudi takrat, ko je nekaj videti nevarno ali težko,
you can get to do amazing things.
lahko naredite osupljive stvari.
Okay, so let's start with our topic for this morning.
Naša tema za danes dopoldan
This is a devotional that I prepared a few years ago for the General Conference meeting.
je tema, ki sem jo pred nekaj leti pripravila za srečanje generalne konference.
And it's entitled, In the Beginning There Was Love.
In ima naslov, v začetku je bila ljubezen.
Survival of the fittest.
Preživetje najmočnejših ali najbolje prilagojenih.
Struggle for existence.
Bitka za obstoj, za eksistenco.
Red in tooth and claw.
rdeča barva, torej kri v zobeh in šapah.
You have probably heard these expressions before,
Morda ste že slišali te izraze.
likely in connection with one of the most famous concepts in evolution.
Verjetno v povezavi z enim od najbolj znanih konceptov v evoluciji,
Natural selection.
naravnim izborom.
According to the theory of evolution, natural selection, along with the selfishness and violence that go with it,
Po teoriji naravnega izbora, skupaj ta izbor, skupaj z sebičnostjo, ki ga spremlja, in nasiljem,
these are not only an accurate description of the natural world,
opisuje naravni svet,
but also they say that they are the origin of all biodiversity,
ampak ti, ki verjamejo v to, pravijo, da je to tudi izvor raznolikosti, bioraznolikosti,
and also the engine that keeps nature constantly changing
in tudi motor, ki neprestano spreminja naravo,
and working properly.
da bi ta delovala kot mora.
In contrast, for the Bible believer,
V nasprotju s tem, oseba, ki verjame v svetopismo,
the impressive array of life that we see in nature
raznoliko življenja, ki ga vidimo v naravi,
did not arise from chance, fight, and death.
ne verjamejo, da je ta raznolikost nastala kot posledica bojev, spopadov, uničenj.
On the contrary, each element of the exuberant canvas of planet Earth was carefully designed,
Ampak da je posledica skrbnega načrtovanja planeta, Zemlje,
and it was good.
in da je to načrtovanje bilo dobro.
And the whole was much more than the sum of its parts.
In da je celota bila veliko več kot samo vsota njenih posameznih delov.
At the sunset of the 6th day of Creation Week,
Ob sončnem zahodu 6. dne stvarjenja
God saw all that He made, and it was very good.
je Bog pogledal vse, kar je naredil, in bilo je zelo dobro.
God did not just design beautifully made animals and plants.
Bog ni samo načrtoval čudovito zamišljenih živali in rastlin,
He designed the entire system based on peaceful interactions
ampak je načrtoval celoten sistem, ki je temeljil na miroljubni interakciji
and fruitful cooperation between all organisms, large and small.
in na rodovitnem sodelovanju med vsemi organizmi, tako tistimi majhnimi kot velikimi.
There was no shortage of resources,
Ni bilo nobenega pomankanja virov
and no suffering was attached to the act of feeding.
in nobenega trpljenja ni bilo povezanega z recimo dejanjem prehranjevanja.
Plants provided food for the animals and for the people,
Rastline so nudile hrano živalim in ljudem,
but they benefited from their relationship as well.
a tudi rastline so imele korist od odnosa živali.
While eating from their flowers and fruits,
Medtem ko so se hranili z cvetovi in sadovi,
animals help plants to reproduce by transporting the seeds and the fruits and the pollen,
so živalski organizmi pomagali rastlinam na ta način, da so prenašali njihova semena, cvetni prah.
the environment, animals and plants were interconnected in many ways.
In narava, živali in rastline so bile medsebojno povezane na različne načine.
The process of photosynthesis is probably too complex to include it in the Bible,
Proces fotosinteze verjetno pa je več kompleksen, da bi ga vključili v svetopismo.
but today we learn in school that plants feed themselves with air, water and sunlight.
Ampak danes seveda vemo, da se rastline prehranjujejo s sončno svetlobo, zrakom in vodo.
Surprisingly, the component of air that they intake
Presenetljivo je element zraka, ki ga zajemajo,
carbon dioxide
ogljikov dioksid,
is precisely the waste product of our breathing process.
stranski produkt našega procesa dihanja.
And the waste product of plant photosynthesis
In stranski produkt fotosinteze
is oxygen, that is the exact gas that we need to survive.
je kisik, ki pa je tisti plin, ki ga mi potrebujemo, da bi preživeli.
Isn't that amazing?
A ni to osupljivo?
Yet, when we look at nature today,
Ampak ko danes pogledamo naravo,
we do not always see that idyllic setting that I am describing.
seveda ne vidimo vedno te idealistične slike, ki jo opisujem.
There is fighting
Obstaja boj,
and predation
so plenilci,
and illness and plagues,
bolezni, kuge,
suffering and death.
trpljenje in smrt.
The prevalence of all these calamities in our planet has been used by some to question the very existence of God.
Navzočnost vseh teh negativnih stvari na našem planetu so nekateri uporabili za to, da bi izrazili svoj dvom v obstoj Boga.
Or even worse, to question his all-powerful and all-loving nature.
Ali še huje, da bi postavili pod vprašaj njegovo vsemogočno in ljubečo naravo.
But the Bible has an answer to this as well.
Toda Svetopismo ima odgovor tudi na to.
An answer that has nothing to do with God's character or intentions,
Odgovor, ki nima nič skupnega z Božjim značajem ali njegovimi nameni,
but with human decisions.
ampak s človeškimi odločitvami.
We know the exact moment when the balance was broken,
Poznamo trenutek, v katerem se je to ravnovesje porušilo.
when God's perfect system of cooperation and mutual benefit
Ko je Božji popolni sistem sodelovanja in medsebojne koristi
was replaced by another based on distrust and self-preservation.
nadomestil drug sistem, ki je temeljil na nezaupanju in ohranjanju samega sebe.
The consequences came fast.
Posledice so bile hitre.
God himself told Adam and Eve that their decision would severely affect animals,
Sam Bog je povedal Adamu in Evi, da bodo njune odločitve močno vplivale na živali,
plants,
rastline
and human life.
in tudi na človeško življenje.
From that very moment, God's original plan for the planet began to blur.
In od tega trenutka naprej je Božji prvotni načrt za naš planet postajal vse bolj zamegljen.
And nature started showing a mixture of confusing features.
Narava je začela kazati nasprotujoče si lastnosti.
Is it possible after 6,000 years of sin
Ali je mogoče po 6000 letih greha
to still find significant clues of that original system in our decayed earth?
še vedno najti namige tega prvotnega sistema v naši propadli zemlji?
I say it is.
Jaz pravim, da je.
In the first chapter of her book, Steps to Christ,
V prvem poglavju svoje knjige Pod Kristusom
Ellen White wrote that even amid the suffering that results from sin,
je Ellen White zapisala, da tudi sredi trpljenja, ki je posledica greha,
God's love is still revealed in nature.
se Božja ljubezen še vedno razodeva v naravi.
And I agree.
In jaz se s tem popolnoma strinjam.
I am a biologist,
Sem biologinja
and my field of expertise is animal
in
behavior.
moje strokovno področje je vedenje živali.
So I try to find clues of God's character in the ways animals interact with each other.
Zato poskušam v tem, kako se živali vedejo druga do druge, najti namige, ki kažejo na Božji značaj.
In the last decades, there have been huge advances in the field of animal behavior.
V zadnjih desetletjih je prišlo do velikega napredka na področju vedenja živali,
Especially on the topics of animal cognition,
še posebej na področju živalske kognicije, torej delovanja možganov,
animal emotions,
živalskih čustev
and animal morality.
in živalske moralnosti.
Did you know that animals have a sense of morality?
Ali veste, da živali imajo občutek za moralo?
Let me show you.
Naj vam pokažem.
In this experiment, capuchin monkeys have been trained to give a rock to the researcher
V tem eksperimentu so te opice bile naučene, da dajo kamen raziskovalcu
to receive some food in return.
in da v zameno potem dobijo nekaj hrane.
But not all foods are the same.
Ampak ni bila vsa hrana enaka.
These monkeys eat cucumber,
Te opice jedo kumarice,
but they prefer other foods like grapes that are like candy to them.
ampak bolj so jim všeč druge vrste hrane, kot recimo grozdje, ki je njim videti kot bomboni, sladkarije.
Look at what happens in this video.
In poglejte, kaj se dogaja.
The first monkey will perform the task
Prva opica je opravila nalogo
and get cucumber,
in dobila kumarico
and that's fine.
in to je ok.
But then the second monkey will do the same job
Ampak potem druga opica opravi isto nalogo
and he will receive a grape.
in dobi grozd.
Pay attention to what happens next.
In potem pazite, kaj se zgodi. Oglejmo si ta video.
Now the grape,
Zdaj gre grozd,
he's looking,
gleda,
cucumber again.
spet kumarica,
Look at that.
poglejte.
Another grape.
Še en grozd.
He knows this is not fair.
Ta opica ve, da to ni pošteno.
Same job,
Ista naloga, isto delo,
different payment.
različno plačilo.
This is not acceptable.
To ni sprejemljivo.
Recently, there's been a lot of research on these topics,
V zadnjem času je bilo veliko raziskav o teh temah
and most of it has focused on social animals,
in večina teh raziskav je temeljila na socialnih živalih,
with high cognitive abilities,
ki imajo visoko sposobnost kognicije, razmišljanja.
such as apes, wolves, elephants, and dolphins.
Torej opice, volkovi, sloni in pa delfini.
But some studies have been done with lower animals,
Ampak nekatere raziskave so temeljile tudi na nižjih živalih,
such as rats and mice.
tako kot na primer podgane in miši.
There have been hundreds of studies,
Bilo je dobesedno na stotine raziskav,
both in the wild and in the lab,
tako v divjini kot tudi v laboratoriju,
that show astonishing abilities in many animals,
ki pri številnih živalih pokažejo na res osupljive sposobnosti.
such as building and using tools,
Tako kot na primer gradnja in uporaba orodja,
solving complex problems without the use of trial and error,
reševanje kompleksnih težav, izzivov
and even planning for the future.
in načrtovanje za prihodnost.
In the area of animal emotions, scientists have discovered that many social species have rich emotional lives.
In na področju živalskih čustev so raziskovalci odkrili, da so številne živali dosegle visoko stopnjo čustvovanja.
A few years ago, the world-renowned primatologist Franz Duval
Pred nekaj leti je svetovno znani primatolog Franz Duval
wrote a book called The Age of Empathy.
napisal knjigo z naslovom Doba empatije.
And in this book, he defends the idea that the social lives of animals in the wild
In v tej knjigi zagovarja idejo, da družbeno življenje živali v divjini
is not ruled by competition and selfishness and fight as predicted by natural selection,
ne temelji na tekmovanju, boju in podobnih stvarih, kot recimo govori teorija o naravnem izboru.
In contrast, he presents more than 100 examples of cooperation, kindness and generosity among animals,
Ampak nasprotno temu predstavlja več kot 100 različnih primerov sodelovanja, prijaznosti in velikodušnosti, ko gre za živali.
and look how interesting. He says that both humans and animals
In pravi, zanimivo, da tako ljudje kot živali
are pre-programmed to feel empathy.
so predprogramirani, da čutijo empatijo.
He's an evolutionist,
On je evolucionist,
but he's talking about programming.
ampak govori o programiranju.
When there is a program, there is a programmer.
Kjer je program, mora biti tudi programer.
Okay, let's go back to empathy.
Gremo nazaj k empatiji.
Empathy is the ability to feel someone else's feelings or experiences
Empatija je sposobnost, ko lahko čutimo občutke ali izkušnje nekoga drugega,
by imagining what it would be to be in that person's situation.
s tem, ko si predstavljamo, kako bi bilo v okoliščinah, v katerih je ta oseba.
Are animals really capable of doing that?
So živali res sposobne tega?
Can they really imagine what is to be in the shoes of another being?
Si lahko res predstavljajo, kaj pomeni biti v čevljih drugega bitja?
In 2011, a team of scientists at the University of Chicago
Leta 2011 je skupina znanstvenikov na Univerzi v Chicagu
published a research study they did to test if rats were able to feel empathy.
objavila raziskavo, v kateri so preizkušali, ali lahko podgane čutijo empatijo.
The researchers put pairs of rats in cages together,
Raziskovalci so pare podgan dali skupaj v kletke
and one of the rats was restrained in a clear tube, the door of which could only be opened from the outside.
in ena od podgan je bila v prozorni cevi, ki je bila zaprta z vrati, ki so se odpirala samo od zunaj.
And the other rat was free to move around.
Druga podgana pa se je lahko prosto gibala naokrog.
The free rat explored the cage
Tista prosta podgana je raziskovala kletko
and the tube
in to cev.
and quickly learned how to open the door to release its companion.
In se hitro naučila, kako odpreti vrata, da osvobodi svojo prijateljico.
But it wouldn't if there was a toy rat in the tube or if it was empty.
Ampak tega ni naredila, če je recimo ta cev bila prazna ali pa je v njej bila igračka podgana.
In the second version of the experiment, they put two tubes inside the cage.
V drugi verziji eksperimenta so dali v kletko dve cevi.
One was containing a rat and the other one was containing chocolate chips.
V eni cevi je bila podgana, v drugi je bil čokoladni čips.
The free rat was expected to go first for the sweets and eat them by itself.
In pričakovali so, da bo ta svobodna podgana najprej šla k tem sladkarijam in jih pojedla.
But instead, it opened both containers and shared the chocolate chips.
Ampak namesto tega je odprla obe cevi in delila ta čokoladni čips.
Dr. Peggy Mason, one of the researchers, said the following.
Doktorica Peggy Mason, ena od raziskovalk, je rekla tole.
All of this tells us that acting on empathic feelings to help another in need
Vse to nam govori, da delovanje na podlagi empatičnih čustev, s katerimi želimo pomagati drugemu bitju v potrebi,
is a biological and in fact a neurobiological mandate.
je biološki, pravzaprav neurobiološki mandat ali obveza.
It's in our brain.
To je nekaj, kar je v naših možganih.
Interesting statement, right?
Zanimiva izjava, ali ne?
And empathy, the capacity to feel for others and the drive to help them,
Empatija, torej zmožnost čutiti z drugimi in jim želeti pomagati,
seems to be engraved in the brain of even simple animals such as rats.
je očitno zapisana v možgane tudi tako preprostih bitij, kot so podgane.
Compassionate empathy is found in many animals, both in the lab and in the wild.
Sočutje kažejo številne živali, tako v laboratoriju, kot tudi v divjini.
The research team of the Amboseli Trust for Elephants
Raziskovalna ekipa Fundacije za slone
has been studying wild populations of elephants in southern Kenya for more than 40 years.
je več kot 40 let proučevala populacijo slonov v Južni Keniji.
And they have recorded hundreds of episodes when the elephants showed empathic behaviors.
In posneli so na stotine prizorov, v katerih so sloni pokazali empatično vedenje.
They saw female elephants helping babies that fell into ditches.
Videli so slonice, kako pomagajo majhnim slonom, ki so padli v jarek.
They were pulling or pushing them,
Vlekle so jih ven ali potiskale ven.
or even digging the sides of the steep with their tusks to reduce the steepness.
Ali pa celo kopale strmo pobočje tega jarka s svojim rilcem, tako da so lahko prišli ven.
And on one occasion, one male was observed taking off a tranquilizing dart from another male.
V enem primeru je nek odrasli slon prevzel puščico, ki je bila namenjena uspavanju drugega slona.
Dropping it on the floor and touching with the trunk where the dart was.
Potegnil je torej ven iz tega slona in potem vrgel na tla in masiral to mesto, kjer je ta puščica zadela.
This shows a profound understanding of the situation.
To kaže na globoko razumevanje situacije.
The helper elephant seemed to know that the dart was painful.
Ta slon, pomočnik, je očitno vedel, da je ta puščica boleča.
And he tried to soothe the discomfort by touching gently the place of the wound.
Zato je poskušal olajšati bolečino s temi nežnimi dotiki rane.
Empathy and altruism are related concepts.
Empatija in altruizem sta med seboj povezana koncepta.
You know that altruism is caring about others and helping them without expecting anything in return?
Altruizem pomeni pomagati drugim, ne da bi karkoli pričakovali v zameno.
Well, to test if chimpanzees would consciously decide to act altruistically towards others,
In da bi preverili, ali se bodo šimpanzi zavestno odločili za altruistično delovanje do drugih,
the research team of Dr. Franz Duval designed a very interesting experiment.
je raziskovalna ekipa dr. Franza Devala razvila zanimiv eksperiment,
That was performed at the Yerkes National Primate Research Center in Emory University.
ki so ga izvedli na Centru za raziskovanje primatov Univerze Emory.
Two chimpanzees were placed in two adjacent cages.
Dva šimpanza so dali v dve sosednji kletki.
They were separated by a wired mesh so they could see each other and hear each other.
Bila sta ločena z žičnato ograjo, tako da sta videla drug drugega in slišala.
And one of them was trained to give an object to the researcher to get food.
In eden od njih je moral dati en žeton raziskovalcu, da bi dobil hrano.
But the team could choose between objects of two different colors.
Ampak šimpanze sta lahko izbirala med predmeti dveh različnih barv.
If he chose the red token, that was the selfish choice.
Če je izbral rdeči žeton, to je bila sebična izbira.
He was given food, but the other one didn't receive anything.
Je ta šimpanz dobil hrano, drugi pa ne.
But if he chose the green token, that's the green object, the altruistic choice,
Če pa je izbral ta zeleni predmet, to je bila altruistična izbira,
then he received food, but the partner received food as well.
je dobil hrano in tudi tisti drugi šimpanz je dobil hrano.
So this graph shows the results of the experiment.
Ta graf prikazuje rezultate tega eksperimenta.
The horizontal red line is 50%.
Horizontalna, torej rdeča črta, pomeni 50%.
So anything above the line is a preference for green.
Vse, kar je nad to rdečo črto, je izbira tistega zelenega predmeta.
So as you can see, most of the time there is a significant bias towards choosing green.
Kot vidite, večino časa obstaja znatna nagnjenost k zeleni izbiri.
The columns correspond to different trials of the experiment.
Ti stolpci ustrezajo različnim fazam eksperimenta.
The first one shows times when the partner was doing nothing, just sitting there.
Prvi stolpec kaže čas, ko je ta druga opica samo sedela.
The second shows times when the partner was actively calling for attention, asking for food.
Drugi stolpec kaže na trenutke, ko je poskušala pridobiti pozornost, želela hrano.
And the third one shows what happened when the partner got aggressive.
In tretji kaže na to, kaj se je zgodilo, ko je ta partnerska opica postala agresivna.
A little punishment there.
Potem je sledila kazen.
The last column is very important
In zadnji stolpec je zelo pomemben,
because it is the control trial
ker gre za kontrolni preizkus,
when there was no partner.
ko ni bilo partnerja.
The drop in the choice for green here
Ta padec v izbiri zelenega predmeta, ki ga vidimo,
shows that they know what they are doing.
kaže na to, da je opica vedela, kaj počne.
They chose to feed the partner
Odločila se in vedela je, da bo hranila partnerja,
except when there was no partner.
razen takrat, ko partnerja ni bilo.
Although quite simple for human standards,
Čeprav je to seveda zelo preprosto za človeška merila,
this experiment shows that chimpanzees pass the altruism test.
nam ta eksperiment kaže, da so opice opravile test altruizma.
They help others without expecting anything in return.
Da so pomagali drugim, ne da bi pričakovali kaj v zameno.
Yes, someone could say real altruism takes an effort.
Lahko bi rekli, da pravi altruizem zahteva trud.
There is no differential effort here in handling the red or the green token.
In da ni neke razlike v dajanju zelenega ali rdečega žetona.
That is true, but the design of experiments for animal behavior is a tricky business.
Ampak eksperimenti, ki so osredotočeni na vedenje živali, so zelo zapleten posel.
In order to obtain significant results, you have to reduce your variables to the minimum.
Zato, da bi dobili smiselne rezultate, morate vse spremenljivke znižati na minimum.
And that sometimes produces unrealistic settings.
In to včasih ustvari nerealne okoliščine.
But chimpanzees have shown to be empathic and capable of truly altruistic acts in real life.
Ampak šimpanzi so pokazali, da so zmožni altruizma in altruističnih dejanj v resničnem življenju.
Living in the same research facility where this experiment took place,
V isti raziskovalni ustanovi, kjer se je odvijal ta eksperiment,
there is a colony of chimpanzees under almost continuous observation.
je kolonija šimpanzov, ki jih praktično neprestano opazujejo.
And there is an old female called Peony.
In obstaja stara samica z imenom Peony,
She has arthritis and she has problems walking and climbing.
ki ima artritis in ima težave s hojo in s plezanjem.
So when the group meets together in a high platform for a grooming session,
Ko se ta skupina torej sreča na dvignjenem odru, da opravijo svoje početje čiščenja,
the young females help Peony to climb by pulling her, pushing her from the back.
mlade samice pomagajo Peony, da spleza gor, tako da jo ali vleče ali potiskajo navzgor.
And they also go back and forth to the fountain
In prav tako gredo tudi večkrat do vira vode
and bring water in their mouths to give it to Peony.
in v svojih ustih prinesejo vodo, da bi jo dali Peony.
So she doesn't have to walk all the way to the fountain, which is at the other end of the facility.
Zato, da ne rabi sama hoditi do tega vira vode, ki je v drugem delu te stavbe.
Another example of tremendous care in chimpanzees
Še en primer izjemne skrbi pri šimpanzih
was reported by Japanese researchers who were studying a wild population of chimpanzees in Tanzania.
so zaznali japonski raziskovalci, ki so proučevali skupino šimpanzov v divjini v Tanzaniji.
A mother and an older daughter took care of a severely disabled little sister.
Mama in starejša sestra sta skrbeli za resno poškodovano mlajšo sestro.
The baby had spinal damage, so it couldn't sit or walk on her own.
Ta mladiček je imel poškodovano hrbtenico, tako da sam ni mogel sedeti ali hoditi.
So the two adults shared the responsibility of taking care
Zato sta si ti dve izmenjavali skrb za to opico.
transporting her and feeding her,
Da sta jo prenašali, da sta jo hranili.
and they managed to keep her alive for 2 years.
In uspeli sta jo hranjati pri življenju 2 leti.
Rats, elephants and chimpanzees are just a few examples,
Podgane, sloni in šimpanzi, to je samo nekaj primerov.
But there are many other examples of care and empathy and altruism for members of their families and groups.
Obstaja pa seveda še veliko drugih primerov altruizma in skrbi za člane iste skupine oziroma družine.
But what about outsiders?
Kaj pa, ko gre za ljudi, ki so outsideri, ki so zunaj skupine?
Do animals care for others that are not their own?
In je živali mar za tiste, ki niso njihovi?
These types of behaviors are more difficult to observe in the wild.
V divjini je to vrstno vedenje težje opazovati.
But there are some reports of caring behavior between different types of animals.
Ampak obstajajo poročila o skrbi, ki jo izkažejo različne vrste živali.
There is a National Geographic documentary called The Eye of the Leopard.
Obstaja dokumentarec posnet na National Geographicu z naslovom Oko leoparda.
There you can see a female leopard that killed a baboon.
V katerem lahko vidite samico leoparda, ki je ubila opico.
And then she discovered a small baby baboon that was clinging from their mother.
In potem je odkrila, da iz mame pleza majhna opica.
And the leopard took the baby baboon and took care of him for several hours.
In ta leopardja samica je vzela tega mladička in potem več ur skrbela za njega.
Transporting him, grooming him and protecting him from other predators.
Skrbela za njega, ga čistila in varovala pred drugimi predatorji, plenilci.
Just as if it were her own cub.
Kot da bi šlo za njenega mladička.
Some scientists have explained this as an anomaly, a mistake.
Nekateri znanstveniki so to pojasnili kot anomalijo, kot napako.
They say that this leopard misdirected her motherly instincts.
Rekli so, da je ta samica leoparda napačno usmerila svoje materinske instinkte.
But what if there was no mistake?
Toda, kaj če ni bilo napake?
What if that was just the universal, original empathy engraved in the brain of the leopard?
Kaj če gre tukaj za tisto univerzalno, prvotno empatijo, ki je zapisana v možgane leoparda?
That in these specific circumstances overcame the after-scene predatory instinct.
Ki je v tem konkretnem primeru bila močnejša od plenilskega nagona.
There is another scientifically documented example.
Še en znanstveno dokumentiran primer.
Of a bottlenose dolphin that adopted a calf from another species.
Delfina, ki je posvojil mladička iz druge vrste.
A melonhead whale.
Iz vrste kitov.
The female was observed in the coastal waters of French Polynesia.
To se je dogajalo v obalnih vodah francoske Polinezije.
Swimming together with the adoptive son.
In ko je ta samica plavala s svojim posvojenim sinom,
nursing him in several occasions,
ga hranila, skrbela za njega,
and taking care of him for 3 years.
In skrbela zanj 3 leta.
The observation was described by the scientists as a rare phenomenon.
Ta stvar je bila strani znanstvenikov opisana kot redek fenomen.
Because biologists who believe that natural selection rules the world,
ker biologi, ki verjamejo, da naravni izbor vlada na svetu,
they find no sense in animals helping others that are not related.
Ne najdejo nobenega smisla v tem, da živali pomagajo drugim živalim, ki niso z njimi povezane.
For me, I see it differently.
Jaz to vidim drugače.
I think that empathy, altruism and selfless care for others regarding of their background,
mislim, da empatija, altruizem in nesebična skrb za druge, ne glede na njihovo ozadje,
is what should be expected from all God's creatures, at least in the original plan.
Je nekaj, kar je potrebno pričakovati od vseh božjih stvarstev, vsaj ko gre za prvotni načrt.
So I think these behaviors that are hints of what once was,
zato mislim, da so takšna vedenja namigi o tem, kar je nekoč bilo.
Evidence of the universal love and care that once ruled the world.
Dokazi o univerzalni ljubezni in skrbi, ki je nekoč prevladovala na svetu.
When we look at nature from a biblical perspective,
ko pogledamo naravo iz svetopisemske perspektive,
trusting that the Bible tells us the truth about the origin of life,
in zaupamo, da Sveto pismo govori resnično o izvoru življenja,
we find much evidence that aligns perfectly with the Genesis story.
najdemo v naravi seveda veliko dokazov o tem, ki so popolnoma usklajeni z zgodbo v prvi Mojzesov.
As any work of art, creation reflects the attributes of the Creator.
Tako kot vsaka umetnina, tudi stvarstvo razodeva lastnosti stvarnika.
When God created humans, He made us in His image,
Ko je Bog ustvaril ljudi, nas je naredil po svoji podobi.
but the rest of creation was made under the same principles of love, wisdom and beauty.
Preostanek stvarstva pa je bil ustvarjen z istimi načeli modrosti, lepote in ljubezni.
Think of a talented painter who paint all kinds of paintings.
Pomislite na nadarjenega umetnika, ki slika različne slike.
In a self-portrait, we find a lot of information about the author because it looks like him.
V samoportretu najdemo veliko informacij o avtorju, ker ta portret je podoben njemu.
But actually, it is a very incomplete representation of the author
Ampak pravzaprav gre za zelo nepopolno predstavitev samega umetnika.
because it is just a flat, static representation of a much more complex reality, the person.
Ker gre za neko statično predstavitev veliko bolj kompleksne resničnosti osebe.
Each of the rest of the paintings with their different views and details
In v različnih slikah, ki jih je naslikal ta isti avtor,
help us to know the author a little better
dobimo pomoč, da ga razumemo bolje,
because all of them capture a bit of his essence.
ker vse te slike nekako povzemajo delček njegove biti.
God's essence is love, and that love had to be reflected in each of his creatures.
Božje bistvo je ljubezen in ta ljubezen se mora kazati v vseh njegovih stvarstvih.
Each in its own level, animals were designed to show the loving character of God,
Na svojem nivoju so živali bile ustvarjene tako, da so pokazale Božjo ljubezen in del njegovega značaja.
and humans were intended to convey the most complete representation of that love.
Ljudje pa naj bi bili najbolj popolna predstavitev te ljubezni.
But then we spoiled the portrait,
Potem pa smo ljudje pokvarili portret.
and with it the rest of the paintings.
In z njim seveda skupaj tudi vse ostale slike.
But God did not give up.
Bog pa ni odnehal.
He had already found a solution,
Bog je našel rešitev
and the solution was, once again, love.
in rešitev je bila še enkrat ljubezen.
Empathic, compassionate, selfless love.
Empatična, sočutna, nesebična ljubezen.
It makes sense that 6,000 years of sin were not able to erase love from the behavior of animals,
Smiselno je reči, da 6000 let greha ni uspelo izbrisati ljubezni iz živali.
because love cannot be quenched or swept away,
Ker ljubezni ne moremo ugasniti, niti je odplakniti.
because love is the greatest virtue,
Ker je ljubezen najvišja vrednota
and because without love we are nothing.
in ker brez ljubezni nismo nič.
Because we are talking about science and the Bible,
Ker govorimo o znanosti in o Svetem pismu
and I am a Bible believer scientist,
in jaz sem znanstvenica, ki verjame v Sveto pismo,
I want to finish with another short experiment
bi rada končala še z enim kratkim poizkusom,
that illustrates the effects of love in contrast with the effects of violence.
ki ilustrira učinke ljubezni v nasprotju z učinki nasilja.
Let's wear the science lab coat again. Lab
Še enkrat
coat.
si oblečemo ta laboratorijski plašč znanstveni.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Oops. So, in this container, I have a substance that my chemist friends would call a non-Newtonian liquid.
V tej posodi imam snov, ki bi jo moji prijatelji kemiki imenovali ne Newtonova tekočina.
But I call it the living substance. The living substance?
Živa snov je to.
It's not alive, but it behaves as organisms, as animals or people.
Ki sicer ni živa, ampak se vede kot organizmi, kot živali in ljudje.
You can see that this is a liquid.
Kot vidite, je to tekočina.
It's a very dense liquid.
Ki je zelo gosta.
With the consistency of paint or honey.
Ki ima konsistenco barve ali pa meda.
But it is a liquid.
Ampak je še vedno tekočina.
So I can put my hand inside.
Lahko dam noter svojo roko.
Let me put a little more water in it, just a little bit. Because we had it ready way in advance and it hardened a little bit. So just...
Ker smo to naprej pripravili, se malo strdilo.
Okay, so let me work in it a little bit.
Malo bom še premešala.
This should be a liquid.
Torej, to je tekočina.
Let's put it back. Okay, now it's better.
Zdaj je malo boljše.
Okay. And again.
In še enkrat.
Okay, I think it's ready.
Mislim, da je zdaj pripravljeno.
Okay, as I was saying, this is a liquid.
To je torej tekočina.
So I can put my hand inside.
In ko dam v njo roko,
and I can touch the bottom of the container.
Se lahko dotaknem dna te posode.
So I can get to the heart of this living organism.
Zato lahko pridem do samega bistva tega organizma.
But this happens because I am treating it with love.
Ampak to se dogaja zato, ker s tem ravnam ljubeče.
I'm being careful.
Pazljiva sem.
I'm being kind.
Prijazna.
So with this love we can get to the heart, to the bottom of the container.
Z to ljubeznijo torej pridem do samega dna te posode.
But what happens if I treat it with violence?
Kaj pa, če ravnam s tem nasilno?
Let's see.
Poglejmo.
Again?
Še enkrat.
So it hardens automatically.
Torej, strdi se.
And I cannot get past the surface.
In ne morem dlje od površine.
The same thing happens with people or with animals.
In isto se zgodi z ljudmi ali živalmi.
If we use violence,
če uporabimo nasilje,
they make a wall or a shell around themselves.
Potem ljudje ali živali postavijo okrog sebe zid, se zaprejo.
And we will never be able to reach their hearts.
In nikoli ne moremo doseči njihovega srca.
Love, in contrast with violence,
ljubezen v nasprotju z nasiljem
can melt armors and turn walls or shields into breaches.
lahko stopi vse zaščite in pretvori zidove v mostove.
As we have seen, love is still engraved in nature.
Ko smo videli, je ljubezen še vedno zapisana v naravi.
And is at the center of God's self-revelation, the Bible.
In je v samem središču Božjega samorazodetja v Svetem pismu.
And the same Bible that tells us that God is love,
in to isto svetopismo, ki nam pravi, da je Bog ljubezen,
tells us that Jesus is coming.
Nam pravi tudi to, da Jezus prihaja.
Soon there will be no more mixture features.
Kmalu več ne bo mešanih občutin.
No more confusing features.
Nič več stvari, ki bi nas zmedle.
Because God will remove violence, suffering and death forever.
Ker bo Bog zavedno odstranil nasilje, trpljenje in smrt.
In the beginning there was love,
V začetku je bila ljubezen
and very soon there will be love again.
in kmalu bo spet ljubezen.
Pure, unselfish, absolute love,
Čista, nesebična ljubezen,
because the God of love will dwell with his people,
ker bo Bog ljubezni prebival s svojim ljudstvom
and we will be his people,
in ker bomo mi njegovo ljudstvo.
and he will be our God.
In on bo naš Bog.
Don't you want to be a messenger of such good news to a suffering world that is longing for love?
Ali si ne želite biti glasnik te čudovite ljubezni svetu, ki si želi ljubezen?
I am Noemí Durán.
Sem Noemí Durán,
I'm a scientist.
sem
I'm an
znanstvenica,
animal biologist,
sem živalska biologinja,
but I trust the Bible.
ampak zaupam Svetemu pismu.
So remember,
Zato ne pozabite,
Jesus is coming.
Jezus prihaja
Trust his word.
in zaupajte njegovi besedi.
Amen.
Amen.